because there's a war on for your mind.
We are now into the second segment of worldwide transmission on over 60 AM and FM affiliates, global shortwave WWCR, the internet, number one on Shoutcast, hundreds of thousands of listeners, and, of course, via multiple satellites, as well as over 100,000 podcast subscribers. I want to say hello to everyone. Listeners to this transmission are fully aware of the real economic outlook and the true economic climate, what's happening fiscally here in the United States, North America, and worldwide. A 75 basis point cut. They were talking about another 25 basis point cut having a devastating effect on the dollar. Many were saying that it was extremely reckless to do that. A 75% basis point, I never imagined they would do this, and it didn't matter. The market began violently plunging. They then, of course, started hyping the basis point cut. This would have happened yesterday if not for the Martin Luther King Day holiday. There was more than 60 billion wipeout just on the London markets yesterday alone. All over the world, stock markets are plunging. We're seeing other currencies drop as the dollar drops. As Dr. Roberts has said, this will pull the world into it. This is just a black hole. And to talk to the real expert, who I really want to thank for spending so much time with us, he normally comes on once a month. He's been coming on every few weeks lately because things are getting worse and worse, is the father of Reaganomics, the head of policy at the Treasury Department under Reagan, former Wall Street Journal editor, syndicated columnist, and he's got a new edition of his book coming out in just a few weeks. I do need to talk to his publisher. I want to carry that at the Infowars.com bookstore. And, again, a true statesman. We are honored to have Dr. Paul Craig Roberts on with us. Sir, thank you.
Hello, Alex.
Break down what this means to have a 75% basis point cut and how this is going to affect the dollar, the markets, what you see unfolding.
Well, Alex, look, I'm not a forecaster. I look at how economies work and what policies work for the economies. And I think right now the United States policymakers have sort of maneuvered the economy into a position in which it's hard for any policy to work. Concerning the stock market drops, I don't know that there's a whole lot to that, because the markets drop a lot. When they get bid way up, they come down, and then people recover and they get bid up again. When stock market drops are serious, like in 1929, it's because the central banks make mistakes. They misread them, and instead of putting liquidity in the markets, they take it out. And the Federal Reserve's response to the 29 market crash essentially was to drain liquidity rather than add it. But what we see the Fed doing now with this cut is to attempt to pump more liquidity into the markets. Now, of course, it's possible that the banks are too damaged, that consumer credit is too extensive for the Fed's effort to pump credit into work. It may be the banks will look at the people who need the loans and decide that they can't risk lending to those people, for example. Or the banks may need to absorb a great deal of the additional credit to bail out their own holdings. It's hard to know how that would work out. But I don't think we're going to be faced with a lack of liquidity. The tax rebate is an effort by the policymakers to bypass the easy credit, low interest rate policy in the event that it doesn't work to pump the money back into the consumer economy. They simply want to give everybody $800. Now, I don't think that policy would be very effective in terms of an overall boost in consumer demand and preventing a recession, if that's what we're in for. most likely it would be drawn down in paying off credit card debt. And 23% of anything that actually finds its way into consumer spending goes abroad through the imports and the offshoring. So we may be in for a recession and a realignment of stock market prices. Whether or not this is going to hurt the dollar is also not predictable, because on the whole, low interest rates make holding Treasury bonds less attractive for foreigners who finance our government. But on the other hand, the drop in share prices make them look more attractive. So the demand for dollars could go up in order to buy up our cheap assets as the market declines. It's just hard to know how this works out. The problem, of course, is that to deal with the domestic situation, they need more liquidity, and in some sense, that liquidity is a threat to the dollar's exchange value. But in the short run, that could be mitigated by the bargain that may appear in share prices. So it's hard to predict how it will come out. I think the more important thing is the hardship for the average American family. Many of them have not had any real increase in their income for years, and yet they've lost jobs to offshoring. They've lost jobs to work visas for foreigners, and now they're confronted with losing jobs to recession. They've also are heavily indebted, and they've used up their home equity in consumption, and many of them now have mortgages that threaten them with being homeless. And so I think the worst part of this will not be felt by Wall Street and banks and shareholders, but by the average American family. They're, I think, now going to go through the ringer.
Dr. Roberts, the last time you were on with us a few weeks ago, you talked about how this could literally, for a time, send us back to the barter system, destroying world markets. Do you think it was a good thing to have a 75% basis point cut? I mean, right now the dollar is going down as we speak. Gold is up about $10 plus and rising as we speak. I mean, certainly they moved in with this huge basis point cut to try to keep a massive decline in the stock market, I guess, because it's a benchmark of overall success in the economy. And that's the first point. And then secondarily, I'm now seeing all the pundits talk about serious global recession. I'm now hearing on the McLaughlin Group and CNN and Fox talk of depression finally being thrown around. We know they tried to keep the confidence up until just a few weeks ago, and I've seen a shift in what the talking heads are saying. What does that signify?
Probably just a lot of noise. It is true that in the long run, the decline of the dollar, it could cause it to lose its reserve currency role, and if another currency hasn't arisen to take its place, it would be very hard to conduct international trade on the basis that it is now, where you have a reserve currency that everyone accepts in payment. So the fact that the United States worsens its economic position by running huge trade deficits and by running large budget deficits, the $150 billion tax rebate will raise the deficit $150 billion because the deficit's already in the red. So this does signal to people concerned with inflation more liquidity, which usually means more inflation, and will make them anxious. But they may not be right in their supposition, because generally in recession prices don't rise.